Check, check.
with that.
Yeah. If I can have everyone's attention, we do have a sign up sheet down front. We're going to start the meeting in about 5 minutes or so. So if you haven't already signed up, if you wish to speak and address the committee today, that'd be great if you could do that. Thank you.
Plenty of time for them to.
Okay, if everybody can take your seats and come to order here, we're about to start the meeting off. Today, we'll be holding our first subcommittee meeting for the special subcommittee on cityhood under the Governmental Affairs Standing Committee. My name is Victor Anderson. I've been asked to chair this committee or the subcommittee here. And we've got 7 members of the subcommittee. That is Mr. Chairman Barry Fleming, Representative Rob Leverett, Representative Eddie Lumsden, Representative Misha Maynor, Representative Mary Frances Williams, Representative Rick Williams, Chairman Stephen Saines, and Chairman Joseph Gullett. And we welcome everybody to the meeting today. Before we get started, I'd like to ask Representative Williams if you would lead us in an invocation.
Thank you. Let us bow our heads. Thank you, dear Lord, for another day. Thank you for the opportunity to live here in the great state of Georgia. Please bestow your blessings upon each and every one of us. Give us the courage, the patience, the temperance to carry out these hearings. Bless our men and women in uniform as they protect us and go about their daily lives also. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Before we get into the presentation by Chairman Dollar on House Bill 841, I'd like to ask our Legislative Counsel, Stuart Morelli, if he will just, for the benefit of the committee and for those that are listening in, to just give us a brief overview of the minimum standards for the creation of a city under the current law and code.
So Georgia law sets some fairly low minimum standards for the incorporation of new cities. The only 2 minimums that need to be met are that the area that the new city is going to comprise have either at least 200 people or an average residential population of 200 people per square mile. And then the second requirement for a new city is that at least 60% of the land area of the proposed city is zoned for residential, commercial, industrial, or institutional uses. So pretty much if more than 60% of the acreage of the new city is zoned for anything other than agricultural or forestry uses, then that standard is met as well. So it's a low, at least 200 people or 200 people per square mile. And then you have to be more than 60% of the territory has to be zoned for non-agricultural uses.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. As we proceed, and Chair Dollar is standing ready here, but I just want to remind everyone, per our agenda, this is a hearing-only meeting. The purpose of this committee is to make sure that the minimum statutory requirements for the bill have been met, and Chairman Dollar has signed an affidavit to that effect along with his submittal, and also to hear the merits. And this bill is subject to be called up by the full Governmental Affairs Committee at any point in the future. So with that, Chairman Dollar, I'll let you proceed with presenting your bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I get started, just like say a couple of things. First, go dogs. Yes, sir.
If we may too, when you get started on that, let's make sure that read the LC number, because I know there was a revision this morning, just to make sure that everybody is referring to the correct version.
Yes.
Sorry
sir.
to interrupt.
Yes. Okay. I believe we left off at go dogs. Amen. I also apologize to the committee. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm a little bit stuffy. I'll do my best. And would like to also thank Chair Lady Taylor for allowing this to be heard so early. So oftentimes when we come in, we just kind of sit around the first few weeks waiting for things to get busy, and then they're busy. So the LC we're working off, that I'm working off of, and the committee should have in front of it, is LC 491367S.
Would that be 47?
471367S. All right. And the bill that we have before us is the product of years of work. It's been quite a process, from obviously the map, from the level of services, from county governance position, and it has truly been a community collaborative. Really reaching out to the community what they wanted this city to look like. And what you have, the result of that is a substitute to HB 841. East Cobb, it is a place. It's undeniable. We all hear it, especially where we live every day. We live in East Cobb. I work in East Cobb, but it's very relative. East Cobb means something different to every person out there. Oftentimes what we found was a person's definition of East Cobb depended on where they lived, or where they sent their kids to school, or where they worked. And the original map looked very different from this one. The second major iteration of the map looked very different from this one. And this is really the result of countless feedback and community engagement. So as you look at the map, I'm happy to answer questions about that. It comprises, an area just under 60,000 residents. The county services that are being contemplated in this bill are police, fire, zoning and code enforcement, and parks. The governance setup is it'll have a 6-person council, and among the city will be 3 districts, and you'll see that I believe it's in your folder as well. All council members will be elected would be elected citywide. However, 3 of those members, half of them, there has to be 1 from each zone, and the purpose of that is to just ensure that there is representation across the city. Where it gets a little bit different is that this system, this county governance does not call for a direct elect mayor. Of those 6 members, 1 of them will be elected to serve 2-year term as mayor. They will have the title mayor, but you could think of it almost like a chairman. This system would be very familiar to Cobb Countyans, because this is modeled after how our county school board is run, with the chairman being elected. And there's a number of reasons we arrived at this. We arrived at this model. We wanted, for a lot of reasons, we wanted a weaker mayor and a stronger city council. And with 6 members, to pass anything, it's in the bill that it has to be, to have a majority, you have to have 6-4, which is also a supermajority. The feeling was, and people I've talked to that have done these, with the federal government, you have checks and balances. Here at the state level, we have checks and balances. We have a Senate, we have a House, we have a governor, and a lot of compromise has to be reached, and that's a very long and difficult process by design. At the local government, oftentimes you just have a city council, or a county commission, and the issue's passed. So the idea is that for anything that's going to be passed, it needs to really be a good idea and a positive for the community. The feasibility came back. The feasibility study came back positive. It does show that the city is financially feasible. And again, this is just just a forecast. Some of the other forecasts we saw were even more favorable. And I believe, Chairman, that's that's all the comments I have. I hope I explained it enough. Don't want to talk it to death, but I'm happy to stand for any questions. I believe we do have some people both for and against that are here to speak on the matter. I'll be happy to make some comments and take questions after they speak as well. But if there's any questions now, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Chairman Dollar. At this point, I'll open it to the committee members for questions that they may have. Representative, who we got first? Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Dollar, your bill, House Bill 841, my assumption is provides for the same method for enactment of a new city as any others that we've had, that being that we, the House and Senate, have to pass it and the governor has to sign it. But more importantly, the people in this area have to vote on it. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chairman. As everybody on this committee would know, this bill does not create a city. It simply creates the opportunity for a referendum for the residents of this area to decide for themselves if they want to incorporate or not. And that I think that gets confused in the press a lot and back home a lot. That we're trying to ram this and create a city and all that. This is simply just to give people an opportunity to vote and decide for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Dollar, I just want to make sure I understood the structure. It was just curious to me. So there's 6 members of council, 3 at large, and 3 elected from the actual city, the districts or the council districts.
So there's 3 districts, and they're all elected citywide. But half the council must reside physically in one of those districts. Now, it can be that that there's 4 or 2 or 1 from each district, but there has to be at least one. But this provides so that there's at least 1 from each of those 3 districts.
So would you qualify as a resident of a particular district to run?
If you ran for that post?
If you ran for one of those
If you ran
seats.
for those posts, because these are, I should have mentioned this, these are 4-year staggered terms. So I believe it's to have them staggered, during the first round of election, that would be, a 2-year term. So half of them will be 2 years to start, and then then 4 years. And I believe that the way we settled it in this final version was the people who qualify for those individual district seats would serve a 2-year term to start, and then it goes to.
But you would have to qualify either to run just as a general, I mean, I know they're all elected citywide, you're saying, but you would have to, during qualifying, you would have to elect whether you were going to run for one of the seats designated for a particular district.
Similar to like a county commission or any city council, there's 6 posts. Like I'm going to qualify for post 6, and post 6 is one that has to reside in that center, center post, right?
I got you. Okay.
That's true.
And then they elect the mayor. The mayor's not elected by the general public. It's elected by the city council.
It is, and it's
from their number, I'm assuming.
from themselves,
Okay.
and it'll operate largely as a chairman. It's some, you don't want to say ceremonial, but it's someone to conduct the meetings, to sign the checks, that's kind of thing.
Does this provide also for city manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It does. It'll be a city manager model.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Maynard.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, but I just wanted to know, somewhere in the notes over here, it said it's going to be a 3 million excess of the revenue. Is that average for most cities? Do you know?
I don't know if there's most cities. Certainly, we've had several, but if you're going back all the way to, I guess, Sandy Springs, Johns Creek, South Fulton, I don't know if there is an average. All I know is that there has to be a study, and it has to be from one of the approved institutions, and it just has to show that the city would be feasible. But I don't know that there's a mean or an average to that number.
Okay. And the next question is, since you're going to be creating fire, police, and 911, I believe that's what it said. Are you expecting, how do you think the job growth is going to impact the area?
I don't know that it'll be a significant increase in job growth. These aren't new services. These are services that are already provided, in the community. It would just shift from the county providing them to the city providing them. I mean, there could potentially be increase in police, increase in fire, but I couldn't tell you that number. No, ma'am. That would be up to the city council. Mhm.
Any other questions for Chairman Dollar yes. Representative Mary Frances Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Matt Dollar, I have lots of questions. The first one is there a bigger map? This is a really small map, and it's also shown as a portion of Cobb. I have some questions. So do we have access to a bigger map where you can?
Yes, I have them in my office, Representative. I didn't bring them with me today. I apologize. I can show you that. If you saw this, laid over a county map, it's actually quite a small area. We're talking about a county of somewhere between 750 and 800,000 people, and we're talking about 60,000, or just under 60,000 in this map. As far as the area determined, I think the best landmark that I can give you is, if you're familiar with the area, is Johnson's Ferry Road. The southern border here is pretty much Chattahoochee River, and Johnson's Ferry comes in right at about the middle of it, and the city border is basically on the north end. It pretty much is, that line is where Johnson's Ferry terminates into Shalford Road. So Johnson's Ferry kind of runs right down the middle of it, with obviously the eastern border being the county line, and the western border being comprised primarily of Old Canton Road, but other various roads.
Yeah, that's a pretty big. I've lived my whole life in Marietta and Cobb, and that's a pretty big chunk of Cobb from my point of view. And part of it is in my current district of House 37. So does any of this new city of East Cobb move into any areas of the current city of Marietta?
No, ma'am. There's no de-annexation for this city. And I'm not sure if you currently represent any of this area. I was under the understanding that it was just myself and Chairlady Cooper who represented part of this area. I think for those familiar with the area, it comprises a good portion of Pope and a good portion of Walton High Schools. Again, I apologize for not bringing a larger map.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, okay. So, so thank you for explaining the boundaries. So do we have information for the committee about the impact upon this proposed city of East Cobb on the county of Cobb County? I've been in touch with, I've reached out to the county manager and to the city of Marietta, because there are potential impacts, and I have not, they have not had enough time to prepare any kind of an impact statement. Do you have anything from Cobb County commissioners?
No, ma'am. They haven't provided me with anything.
Have you asked them?
I've met with the commissioner, and I've met with the commissioner in this area, and I've met with the chairlady just to discuss it, and for them to voice any concerns they have, and they have, but they haven't provided me with any kind of a study, at the end of the day, everybody that would live in this potential city is still a Cobb County as well.
Okay. I'm just receiving a lot of email about this from different groups that have come together to oppose this and have been told there are petitions with over 1,000 signatures opposing it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions on the part of the committee? All right, seeing none, we'll move along to thank you, Chairman Dollar.
Thank you,
And
Chairman.
if you want to keep that seat and we'll direct would you prefer to do that or?
That sounds like a great idea. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. We'll direct anyone who comes to address the committee to the podium to our left and your right. The first name we have on our sign-up sheet is, and please forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's name, but it's Mindy Seeger.
I don't know if that needs to stay open, kind of need a.
Ms. Seeger, if you will, please state your name, where you live, just so that we've got that for the record, please. And you might pull the mic down a little closer too.
Yep, I got it. All right, my name is Mindy Seeger. I am a resident of Cobb County in the area known as East Cobb. I co-lead the East Cobb Alliance. ECA was established in 2019 when the previous effort in this bill on the matter were raised. We're a group of residents across the political spectrum that, for various reasons, are opposed to a city of East Cobb. And in the many conversations I've had about the issue within my community, the response is overwhelmingly, why? And I don't want that. The initial effort started with just a few news articles that a group was forming to look at the idea. Then ECC was granted a public audience at our then County Commissioner Bob Ott's town hall. Attendance was bursting at the seams despite the move to a larger venue. The prior House bill was dropped in the hopper a couple of days later at the end of session to start the 2-year cycle. The merits were debated in the community, an expanded map, and no move on the legislation, then a dead bill. The bill's co-sponsor, Representative Sharon Cooper, said residents are fat and sassy, content with current level of service, and it's a dead issue just 5 months before signing on as a co-sponsor of the new bill. There's now new faces to the Cityhood committee, but the same song and dance. Use fear, buzzwords like local control, questionable financial feasibility study, and no long-term vision to speak of. The scope and math have moved around a bit, but the fact remains incorporating the city is another layer of government. A few points of concern as to the legislative process. The latest feasibility study surprisingly includes services of police, fire, zoning, and code enforcement. When the legislation was introduced, it was for parks, trash, zoning, and code enforcement. While East Cobb Cityhood claims the shift was due to residential feedback concerning public safety, there was no advance notice of the shift scope. Now we have a study that doesn't match the legislation. Late this summer, earlier this fall, your committee met and agreed city lights shall be removed from all the allowed language in the law for all cityhood efforts. Yet HB 841 still has this concept in corresponding language. Is this how it is written, that the mayor of the new city would be selected among city council members and not by resident voters? The contradiction of local control while usurping the important decision of who shall serve as mayor is alarming. Citizens should be able to directly participate in the selection of this executive officer. The bait and switch of offered services are much more costly. The study shows a surplus dependent on franchise fees and can be easily depleted when the true cost of public safety is realized. To that end, the state law allows for the transfer of the 2 identified fire stations for $5,000 each. It clearly states that this is for land building and improvements. It does not talk about movable equipment like fire trucks. Those big ticket items seem to be missing from the study's budget and would burn through the projected surplus. It's either bad budgeting or gross entitlement to assume that the county will transfer these assets at no cost. Not to mention it would be a failure of the county's fiduciary responsibility to all its taxpayers. A similar situation at the Government Center on Lower Roswell Road, which East Cobb Cityhood Committee seems to think the county will gift them this $3 million or higher valued building that hosts the tax assessor's office is an early voting location and houses a police department. This or any building other than a fire station is not covered in the aforementioned state law. Best case scenario of purchasing this building at a percentage of book value would still erode at the projected surplus. At East Cobb Alliance, we believe in the boundless potential of our community, but that's been true for decades without the boundaries of a city. We ask you to consider to stop this bill here for its gaps in legislative integrity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And we do have a question from Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it Ms. Singer? Is that right?
Seeger, like Bob, but not a
Seeger.
school.
Seeger, okay. Seeger like Bob, but not the what?
Not as cool.
Okay, I got it.
Try as I may.
I appreciate you coming today and thank you for your comments. And I'm trying to evaluate them and understand them. And as you were commenting, I was flipping through parts of the bill. So forgive me if I were to ask you something that you already covered. But so I'm once again trying to evaluate your comments. What is your background, Ms. Seeger?
I'm an accountant by trade. I'm currently not working. I'm staying at home. Kind of did some pandemic schooling and have decided to focus on the family for the time being. You know, I'm active in my community. I'm active politically in my community. So that's helped me somewhat to figure out how to kind of organize around this.
And you live in this area to be
I do.
incorporated?
I do. I
Okay.
actually live very, very near one of the targeted fire stations. So no matter which way they draw the map, I seem to be in it either way.
Do you think the people of this area ought to have the right to vote to whether or not they want to be a city?
I think what's interesting is the Cityhood Committee has pushed out a couple of push polls. And in those push polls, the question is asked, do you agree with a referendum that would provide XYZ service that they're proposing? There's a big difference there. Rather not people want to vote on a referendum and rather not they want a city are two different things. So when you start to see numbers of 46% approve this measure, the questions are kind of convoluted I've had people reach out to our group and say, well, am I saying, yes, I want a referendum or yes, I want a city? Because my answers are different. So what I would like to see, I would love for Representative Dollar, Representative Cooper to put out a push poll that separates that issue. Let's talk about whether we want a referendum and then separately talk about whether we want a city. They're two different things.
So my question was, do you think the people of this area ought to have the right to vote to whether or not they become a city?
I think when the legislation is written correctly, we can advance to that next step.
And if it's not written correctly, then you can vote against it and encourage people to do so, correct?
I think it's your responsibility to stop it if it's not legislatively integrative before that.
So let's talk about that a second. You mentioned that in this bill, there were things called city light.
Yes.
Tell me what you're talking about.
If you'll give me just a moment. If there's been a revised copy, I don't have that. This is what I have.
Tell me the LC number at the top of your copy.
471103.
That's not the one we have in front of us. We have 40.
Right. My understanding from what Representative Dollar just said, it was changed this morning. I'm trying to work on the fly with you guys, but it's not my job.
Well, tell me the problems that you were referencing to, if you would, please.
So the issue of city light, this committee held rules that said that they would no longer allow that. What the issue is with city light is you end up with a city government that exists in perpetuity that has to provide these services, but they provide the bare minimum. And then we have this idea of a weak mayor. If I'm going to have an executive that is in charge of the city, that is in charge of hiring a police chief, that is in charge of hiring a police chief, that is in charge of hiring and managing these things, a city manager, a mayor, and a mayor pro tem, that person, in my view, should be elected duly by the citizens of that area, not self-selected and modeling after a school board that, quite frankly, right now isn't the most efficient model of governance we have.
So if this would change to have the mayor elected citywide, you would support East Cobb Cityhood?
No, I would not.
So it doesn't matter to you either way, you're gonna be
I
against
have
it?
other issues. That's one of a list of concerns that I have. But I think if we're going to do this, I should be able to be active in the selection of the mayor.
So what I'm trying to focus on though is this idea of city light that you say is here. So your definition of city light is having a mayor elected by the council.
It's one tenant of it, yes.
Okay, what makes that city light?
You're proposing a city another layer of government that has a weak leader.
So we have weak forms of city mayor governments all across the state of Georgia. You know that, correct?
Yes.
And so why would it be bad to do it in this situation when it works in other places?
Why did your committee vote this summer, late this summer, early fall to amend that language?
Sure, if I may, just as a
Sure.
point of clarification there, this committee has not met before today. What you are referring to is a study committee we held on annexation and cityhood. And in our discussion of cityhood on that, we discussed, and I just confirmed with legislative counsel, the fact that the discussion around city light, the concept was held fairly extensively. That is not outlined in code anywhere. And we did make as part of our recommendations that that discussion not be a part of code. So technically what you're saying is correct in that a committee did discuss that matter, but it has not been in code and has not been stricken from code. So I'll let you proceed. Sorry.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Ms. Seeger, I think what you may be referring to is what's called in many parts of the country as townships. If you take Pennsylvania, for example, which I'm familiar with, they have cities and then they have something called townships, which is commonly referred to as city light. We
Okay,
don't have that in the state of Georgia. And as I understand this bill in front of us today, it does not create anything like that. It creates a form of government for a city, which is allowed under our constitution and laws of the state and is somewhat similar to other cities in the state as well.
I appreciate your clarification. I mean, that's the language that's being used by the proponents of this, and it's the language that's being used by the representatives who've co-sponsored the bill. So I'm just trying to understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Maynard.
Thank you for coming today. I really like it when citizens express themselves and you have that right to do that. 2 questions for you. Your group that you represent, about how many people are in that group?
That is a good question. I'd have to look at numbers because we kind of went through this when it went through a cycle in 2019. We had several hundred members at that point, and it's kind of waned and waxed a little since then, but I could get that to you.
So I believe it was representative over here. She said that there was a signature that went around and there was 1,000 votes or something like that. Not 1,000 votes.
A petition opposed, and I think that was in the last cycle. To my knowledge, I haven't seen one for this edition.
And so do you think your group is under 1,000 or over 1,000?
Probably right around 1,000, I think would be fair.
And the other question I have is, you mentioned a lot of things regarding management and finances. What other things are you not happy with besides the election of the mayor?
I think as we discussed here earlier, it's a little bit confusing as to how the at-large city council members versus the in-district city council members work. And I know, for the average voter, that may be confusing. So I think that kind of adds a layer, for voters to understand exactly what they're voting on, and what those people individually do. The other thing that's interesting is this map it was smaller, it got bigger, it got smaller again. And I just would like to see a little bit of consistency with what are we really trying to accomplish and why? How does this benefit the community? And who's really asking for it?
And I have a follow-up question. Is that
Sure.
okay, Chair? When you're thinking about just your day-to-day life, right? If this East Cobb becomes a city, what changes for you?
What changes for me is, I think the biggest thing is that the fire department goes from the world-class Cobb County Fire Protection Service that we currently have, that has an ISO 1 rating of 1, which is the number, it's like the highest rating you can get, which is what keeps our insurance rates low. If we go to just a 2-station fire department, over time, because you lose that leverage of scale, you could have disruption of service or degradation of services and the funds that they have in a 2-station fire department. They lose that ISO 1 rating. Not only do I have potentially lesser protection, but my insurance rates also go up. I think those guys at fire stations literally right behind my house. I think they do a great job, but they do so in part because Cobb County leverages its size to provide the world-class fire protection that we currently have. I don't want to see that change. In terms of public safety with the police, I don't personally feel unsafe at a level where I feel like creating a whole new police department is warranted. And it's expensive. I mean, we know that. And again, it's an honorable profession. And I think those guys that are currently there do a great job. It's not a very lucrative one, and funding a police department is expensive. That's a fact. That's not, I mean, that's not an opinion. It's just a fact. And we see places like South Fulton that 5 years in, they're struggling to pay their officers, or they've got payment gaps between the people they brought in and the people who have longer 10 years of service. So what does this look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? What does this look like when my kids are ready to come home from college? Are they going to be able to afford to live in East Cobb and be near us? That's something I think about long-term. And I'd like to see the Cityhood committee show some long-term vision or goals of what they're planning to do, not just whether or not they can be successful in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Seeger.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions on the part of the committee for Ms. Seeger? Seeing none, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your
Our
time.
next person on the list is Pamela Reardon, and I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak and make sure your points are made. However, I will, we're not necessarily under a tight time constraint, but we do want to make sure everyone has that opportunity. So if you have a point to make that has already been addressed and to your satisfaction, please be mindful of that. Thank you. Ms. Reardon.
Thank you. I'm not on the East Cobb Cityhood Committee per se. I am not on the Alliance, but just so you know, I live smack dab in the middle of the map, okay, in East Cobb. And also for complete clarity, I was one of the people who was against the East Cobb City the first time, so you can take me off your list. And that's not accounting that on that way. So I'm a very practical person, and I have been lobbying at every commission meeting, pretty much every commissioner meeting we have had in Cobb County. The big thing that I have seen and scares me to death is the direction that these commissioners are taking our county. They make no bones, and they do state that their goal is to urbanize our suburbs. And I do not want maybe a couple houses down from me in my neighborhood to be knocked down, and then using the new UDC code that they want to bring in, which is the code that what happened in Decatur, Roswell, Sandy Springs, that will say, you know what, you've taken HUD money, okay? And you are obligated to put, and I'm going to call it Section 8 because that's what it is, housing in there as a percentage. And I know I'm not supposed to say that's not politically correct. They have now a new fancy term for it, affordable something something. But I'm a realtor. I can tell you what is affordable and not affordable because I lived through the last downturn. I had to list and sell short sales and foreclosures night and day, and that's coming again. But right now, you know, the affordable house in Cobb County is maybe through 450,000. Okay, and that is just going to get worse. So bringing in a developer who has the authority to take whatever amount in that high rise, I call it 4 or 3 story, a high rise in a bunch of single family homes. I don't like that, and it's not something that we want to do in East Cobb. This is why I now support the cityhood for East Cobb, is to control the density, to control the codes. There is now 69 pages, people, 69 pages in the commissioner's purview that they are changing codes for Cobb County, 69 pages. And then it's the UDC. No one, they say, no, it's not going to affect single family homes. Yes, it is. Look at the reality and look what's happened in Roswell. I have a friend who lives in Roswell who sent me the data on this, and he is, are you okay? Oh, so I just wondered. So he sent me the data on this, and all the people this last election that brought in that 7 years ago got voted out this past election because they don't want it so that you've got a 5-story building right up against a street, And you have no variance because the developer wants it that way because they can make more money. They want to make Johnson Ferry a corridor. They want to add sales tax to our sales that we have now is 6%. They could go up to 8 pennies, right? And they want to bring in more transportation. They want to come right up Johnson Ferry. They want to have high density alongside Johnson Ferry. This is the plan. They make no bones about it. They state it outright. And for this reason, I am supporting Cityhood to control, because now we have one person, right, for 200,000 people. So we want local control of our just under 60,000 people. And this is the main reason. There's many other reasons. You know, we had to contend yesterday with the devil coming to Georgia to steal more votes. And this is something that we've been fighting in Cobb County. And I live in East Cobb. I want to protect East Cobb. This is it. And someone else can talk about the taxes, because taxes will not increase. You have to understand that Cobb County is still going to collect the taxes. You know, the property taxes is going to be a pass through to the city of East Cobb. So your taxes are not going to increase, but everyone can talk about the other things. Thank you so much, Jets. Does anyone have any questions?
Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Ms. Reardon? Okay, Representative Williams.
Thank you. You said there would be no new taxes. Is that what
I'm
you
sure
said?
that the people representing the city committee will talk about that more, but I got involved because I didn't last time want another layer of government and taxes. There will be no new taxes because our property taxes are our property taxes. That's the revenue. It'll be passed through from the Cobb County to the city.
How will the city of East Cobb generate money to operate?
They can answer that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned a UDC. What exactly is that?
Unified Development Code for High Density.
Is it maybe uniform?
Unified, same thing. Yeah,
Development
high density,
code,
UDC.
okay.
So it's part of their new 2040 comprehensive plan. And that's also why they're changing a lot of the codes. So the idea is they think there's going to streamline zoning. So when a developer comes to have zoning, they never, ever, ever want to do the zoning that it's supposed to be. And they always want different zoning. So they always have to have all these meetings and back and forth. So they think that they're going to change the variances so much so that they can have pretty much anything goes. But my friend in Roswell says that they've had even more meetings because of this, because you say this, but they want that. And they still want to have different variances in the zoning. And there's already been examples. The north part of Johnson Ferry in Shallowford, there's a church that came in there and wanted to build. So we fought not against the church, but we fought against the townhouses and the single family houses that they wanted in there, because I think at the end there were 128 variances and code changes, the zoning code changes.
So is it fair to say your concern now has to do mostly over land use and zoning and the way that's managed by the county government? You have concerns about that you're hoping the city
Yes.
government would maintain the character of the existing neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And my protection with the police.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
Okay, thank you,
All right,
Ms.
anybody
Reardon.
else? No,
I
okay.
think we're good. Next on our list is Norman Black.
I live in the Alpine Lake subdivision, just a half mile south of Shallowford Road off Johnson Ferry. I've been there for close to 2 decades. I know a lot of the people in there and in the whole area. I belong to several organizations. To begin with, on a positive note, I want to say that I agree with much of Mrs. Reardon's analysis of what the county is doing. In fact, all of it, what they're doing and what they want to do and what they've stated they want to do. However, I'm here to say that I know of no person I know, I've not met anybody that was, whose opinion was solicited prior to the introduction of the bill before you all for consideration. It sort of came out of the blue, which is not the way a bill should originate when it has to do with imposing or calling for a referendum for the creation of a municipality. Now let it go at that, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Black, we do have one question if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, Chairman Fleming.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Blight. My question for you is pretty simple. Are you in favor of the people of East Cobb having the right to vote to whether or not they want to be a city?
I'm in favor of them expressing their opinion as to whether or not they want to vote.
Could they do that by voting?
They could do that if someone solicited their opinion, which is the normal way in which a bill like this originates, in my opinion and my understanding.
Would you be in favor of soliciting the opinion by having a referendum?
No, I'd be in favor of it by having us stand up as a group and knock down this bill if necessary.
So you would be opposed to allowing the people in this area to vote to whether or not they want
Well,
to be
they
a
don't
city?
want to. Nobody has expressed an opinion. I'd be opposed to having people given the right to have a referendum as to whether or not they want a king to rule instead of a governor over Georgia, when nobody has expressed an opinion as to whether or not he wants that.
Even if we made you king? I'm just kidding with you. Thank you for coming, Mr. Black, and I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you answering my question.
Thank you, sir. Next on our list is Mr. Robert Hanson.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Robert Hanson. I'm a retired insurance agent. I've been a property owner, taxpayer in East Cobb since 1988. I understand with this new bill, there will be 6 city commissioners, city manager. I'm not going to be one of these commissioners who is booted and spurred to ride on the backs of East Cobb taxpayers. I'm not a general contractor. I'm not going to get money for building the new city hall, fire station, police station, or whatever else. So I ask, what's in this for me other than more taxes? Another question, who is really behind this and what's in it for them? It was stated earlier, a city can be as small as a square mile. So why don't we have everybody in every square mile in Georgia have the right to vote to have their own city? We can have thousands of mayors. Isn't that a wondrous, wonderful idea? So someone asked, well, doesn't everybody have the right to vote on it? I guess they have the right to vote on everything. But does it make any sense from an economy of scale to split our state into ever smaller and smaller units, all of whom have to get paid? Why not go the other way? Why not say Cobb County is one city? We eliminate 6 cities. Therefore, we can eliminate 5 mayors, lots of other politicians. So if you had this unigov idea where you're eliminating politicians and bureaucracy, that would be a fantastic idea. At one time, Cobb County was overwhelmingly Republican. The Cobb County Commission was all Republican. Pulling stunts like this, you're driving people away from the Republican Party or simply deciding not to vote. They're all crooks, no matter what side you're on. I think I will quit. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hanson? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on our list is Cindy Cooperman.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Cooperman. I'm a little shorter. And I am on the East Cobb Cityhood Committee. I'm one of the organizers of the committee, and I became involved with it really in March of last year. So I'm a newer member of the committee, part of the organizing, and part of my main role in the committee is also working on the community engagement and communication that we're doing around what our objectives are and really what the benefits are to the community at large. One of the things I would say, I've been listening to the comments, of course, and we do know that there's people who were opposed to it from the previous initiative. It's pretty well documented. And a lot of people participated and shared that. But one of the things that we were really focused on was taking a lot of that feedback and those concerns, some of which have been expressed here today, and making sure that it really was incorporated into what we were proposing this round for Cityhood. That was a really important thing. And with everything, there is compromise. So I don't think you're going to come up with a perfect city that really pleases everyone, but you can really find a common ground that appeals to most people. And so one of the things that we also did was we wanted to understand, where do people really sit on this issue? Because we have a lot of subjective feedback. We see articles, we see social media posts, but we wanted an objective measure to really understand, what do people think at the end of the day? So we did start to build some what I call a straw poll, where we did solicit input from people who would come and participate in our virtual town hall events. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we were limited in being able to get in person initially. We are looking to be able to expand that. We've been able to meet with smaller groups, but in the broader meetings, we've been able to ask people what their thought was. And the result was we started with people really a third opposed, a third of the people were really undecided or wanted more information, and a third of the people supported it. So as we've invested our time and energy in the communication and the community outreach, one of the things that we've seen is a shift in the numbers of support. So we've seen support overall grow, and we've also seen a lot of people move into that undecided ground. So similar to Mrs. Rudin, who was up earlier, we have spoken and engaged with a lot of people who might have been opposed to it previously, but when they sit down and have an opportunity to really evaluate it on its merits and look at the feasibility study and understand, what that really means. And Mr. Hausmann will be speaking later. I can answer more detailed questions about it. But at the end of the day, it just also makes a lot of financial sense for the city of East Cobb to be formed. And so we're also very appreciative of being here today and being able to ask for opportunity for the residents of East Cobb to be able to vote on a referendum.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, Ms. Cooperman. Do we have any questions? Yes, Representative Saint.
Thank you for coming. Just a quick question. What was the catalyst behind you deciding to join the Cityhood committee and getting that involved? Was there a particular issue or need that you found that was Cityhood was the solution for?
Well, I wasn't aware of the Cityhood initiative the first time it went around. And then after they had decided to table it for a while, I had the opportunity to see a live stream event where one of the previous committee members had given a presentation. It was framed as a debate. And I have to say, a lot of the points really resonated with me in that session. So of note, I really think one was around just sense of community and community development. I've lived in East Cobb for just over 10 years now, and I have lived in some other areas in the Atlanta metro area. And, it kind of struck me that I live in this beautiful area of the city, but I have to go to Sandy Springs to get some services. I have to go to Roswell. I have to go to Marietta. So why do I have to do that? And then when you start looking also a little bit more closely, when you start to have issues in East Cobb, a lot of times, our representatives are out of reach. Issues that are important to me and my neighborhood, all I can get is a form fill email sent back to me. I'm just not getting the engagement or the representation that I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll call up Ms. Sarah Haas.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys, first of all, so much for serving the state of Georgia. We appreciate that. My name is Sarah Haas. I've been a resident of East Cobb for about 13 years and in this proper cityhood, so to speak, of East Cobb for about 10 years. I joined the committee after some friends shared with me the new cityhood effort, and it was really important to me, what some of you spoke to, the character of East Cobb, to be able to sustain that long-term with some of the changes that are just coming statewide and in our country and in our community. And I just really want to maintain that character. Also with redevelopment, there's no really space for development in East Cobb. So I'd love to be able to have community engagement with the redevelopment of East Cobb. That's really important to me. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom. My background is engineering, and similar coming alongside Cindy Cooperman and Scott Hausmann and Craig Chapin. It's really important to me to get community engagement and to hear what the residents have to say. And I do believe that we should give the residents of East Cobb the opportunity to make their voice heard by bringing this to a referendum.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you. Next, we'll have Craig Chapman, or Chapin, sorry, Chapin.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here today. Thank you for your service. I was trying to keep track. I think I've been an East Cobb resident in the heart of what would be the proposed city of East Cobb for 50 years. Moved in second grade, so went to elementary school, middle school, and high school in East Cobb. Was not involved the first time around with the initiative, was aware of it, was supportive of it. But then when there was the opportunity to kind of relaunch the initiative this time, is when I volunteered to come in and help. I did note that I'd never miss a meeting because I ended up coming to be chair of the committee because I was not there at that meeting. But it has been, for me, an opportunity to really evaluate, as a longtime Cobb resident and a proud Cobb resident, really, how do we have local control and a local voice on those issues that are most salient and most relevant to our community? Which is why, if you look at the feasibility study and the services that we pushed forward, thank you, Matt, for doing that, it has been to take on those things that we feel like are really most critical and have made our area most successful. This isn't a succession from Cobb County. That was not our desire. This isn't a criticism of Cobb County leadership as it relates to overall. It's just, you look at a county that's 385 odd square miles, 785 or 790,000 residents, and 5 representatives where you vote for 2 of those. We were proposing a city of roughly 55,000 residents where you would have 6 representatives. The ones that you run into at the grocery store, run into church, community, and really folks that live in the community control those decisions that we believe are most relevant to that. So we appreciate you taking this up. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of democracy. I believe in really representation, and I think the ability to go to referendum is just that. If there is the folks that live within the proposed city of East Cobb are opposed to that, then it won't pass. And so be it. The citizens will have spoke. But as it relates to the opportunity, we appreciate your consideration for taking this to referendum.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on the part of the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our list is Scott Hossman.
So I'm Scott Hausmann. I've lived in what would be the proposed city of East Cobb for 25 years. I've lived in north of 120, and now I live south of 120 in Indian Hills subdivision, in the Wheeler part of the Indian Hills subdivision. And, you know, honestly, for me, governing in a democracy is hard, and it's supposed to be about the will of the people. And, you know, the only way you can know the will of the people is by being one of the people. And so to me, it just makes sense that the smaller group of people that get to decide are those that are closest to you. So closer to the people is better. And so for me, that's why I am supportive of the cityhood in general. But that's also why I believe it should be brought to a vote. And if people don't want it, they don't want it. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Next on our list is Scott, and I believe it's Killebrew. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members, for listening to us. My name's Scott Killebrew, as he said. I've lived in East Cobb for over 30 years. I'm retired. I'm opposed to this because I'm opposed to more government, period. More government means more taxes. I don't really care what the feasibility study says. I think it's flawed. Mindy spoke to the cost of fire stations, fire engines. February of 2019, Cobb County bought
four fire engines, $3.5 million. That $3.5 million is not in this study. How many policemen do we need? How many police cars do we need? How much body armor do we need? How many weapons do we need? None of that's in there. This study is flawed, in my opinion. Should we vote on it? That's a tough question. This thing came up out of the blue, as Mr. Black said. None of us even knew about it. Nobody asked for it except for some small little committee headed by the Retail Planning Corporation, who was interested in zoning at the time. Yes, our Cobb County Commission has changed. We have some real issues with that commission now. We have some issues with zoning there. But this thing has morphed all along. But one thing they've always been interested in is zoning and code and development. Follow the money. That's what I have to say. So thank you for listening. I respectfully tell you that I'm opposed. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. We do have one question, Representative Sains.
First, Mr. Killebrew, thank you for coming and thank you for voicing your opinion. It's an essential part of the process and significant whichever way you feel about it. In terms of what you and the a prior speaker said about this coming out under the blue, the way I look at this process is that we are filtering what the voters would get a choice to do. So we're filtering some basic standards to make sure that we don't put anyone in a situation to harm themselves by voting yes to this bill. So would it be fair to say that we're going through the process, a very formal process of soliciting the opinion of this community? Would that be fair to say, though there might be an impression that there has not been enough outreach to this point, we're doing the process to make sure that there is outreach by referendum and soliciting that opinion through a vote, which we commonly do for many decisions in our democracy.
So I'm not a lawmaker, and I don't pretend to understand how all this works. Is a referendum a vote to say, yes, I want the city, or no, I don't? Or is a referendum to say, I think we should call for a vote?
You're correct on the first format. The referendum is that choice.
If you want to have a referendum on a choice to vote, I'm good with that. But if you want to just have a vote, city yes, city no, I would be opposed to that. I hope that clarifies the position.
I think we both know where we are at, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll ask Chairman Ed Setzler to step to the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a co-sponsor of the bill, I wanted to just speak to the committee and address maybe some of the concerns raised by folks today, and highlight my appreciation to Chairman Dollar for sponsoring this effort. I and others in Cobb County are not going to only be supporting the city of East Cobb effort, but also the municipality of Lost Mountain in West Cobb, which I think also has a very high-minded and an appropriate approach, although the form and the details of Lost Mountain will be different than East Cobb. I think the idea that folks can represent themselves is an important principle. Ms. Seeger came, and again, I appreciate her presence today addressing some of these issues, but I did want to address something that she raised really right to the heart of her comment about, quote, as she said, this is another layer of government. About 20 years ago, Georgia, this General Assembly acted under the then leadership of Governor Roy Barnes in a bipartisan effort with HB 489, which required that there's no duplication of services. So if you're paying taxes for fire here with a city, you can't pay taxes for fire with the county. You can't, if you're paying police taxes for the county, you don't pay for it for the city. The idea of this another layer of government, it's just a different layer of government. Rather than getting these services through the county, you'd now be getting them from the city. And because of the 489 process that's been in place and clarified for 2 decades now, it is not another layer of government. It is a layer of government providing services that's closer to the people, not another layer on top. So whatever side of this question you're on, I wanted folks who are listening today to make sure they're very clear in understanding that this isn't a new layer of government. It is taking functions that are now being provided by the county and providing them through a city delivery system, which is closer to the people. And to that point, I think it's important to recognize this is not more government, but it's really representative government. If you think about I as a representative and also as a citizen who lives in unincorporated Cobb County, local government for me, if something's happening outside my neighborhood or there's something that's going to be affecting me at the local government level, whether it's police support, whether it's paving roads, whether it's a zoning case, one county commissioner, and the county commissioner that represents me represents almost 200,000 individual citizens. So for me, my local government representation is 1 to 200,000 people. Now, in the cities that I represent, Kennesaw and Ackworth, with populations of about 30,000 people, 6 council members and mayor, you've got 1 local representative for 5,000 people. So in the 2 cities that I represent that have been in place for over 100 years, the relationship of citizens per local elected official is 1 to 5,000 versus 1 to 200,000. So if you live in the city of Ackworth or Kennesaw, you have literally 40 times the representation at the local level that you do by being an unincorporated Cobb. Whether you live in East Cobb now, whether you live in what would be the city of Lawson Mountain, or if you live in the Greens Crossing neighborhood that I live in unincorporated Cobb County, 1 to 200,000 can be your local support from elected officials in representative government, or 1 to, in this case, about 9 or 10,000 people. I mean, the density that East Cobb will have in terms of representation is going to be about 20 times the representation that you have in terms of responsiveness, local elected officials who hear your concerns and bring them to bear with the powers of local government to actually affect an outcome for you. So I would contend to everyone who raised this, it's not more government. The 489 law in statute today says there cannot be duplication of services. It's in statute. That's not going to change by this. It's simply a separate layer of government where you have, in this case, about 20 times the density of representation that you would have otherwise if you stay in unincorporated Cobb County. It's a decision for citizens to make, but I want every citizen, whichever side of the question they may be on right now, to be able to make this with an eyes wide open understanding of exactly what we're talking about. As we think about that, you think about the 6 cities in Cobb County, would we suggest today that we should dissolve those cities? Should Ackworth, Kennesaw, Marietta be dissolved and have one big, as the gentleman said earlier, one big unigovernment where you've got, where no one has city representation? I don't think anyone is suggesting that. I think the cities we have today provide a great function. I think to suggest that they should go, I think the suggestion that East Cobb with 55 to 57,000 people shouldn't have a right to exist calls into question the right to exist of other cities. In fact, what we're talking about here, even though we have much denser representation, I just want to go right to the fact that was raised by Mr. Killebrew and others, that as you think about this, what would East Cobb be? East Cobb as a city still, population-wise, is going to be equal to or larger than Gainesville, Georgia, equal to or larger than Valdosta, equal to or larger than Rome, Statesboro, LaGrange, and Smyrna. So that's the size, and we're talking about Valdosta, LaGrange, and Rome, and Gainesville. These size cities is what we're talking about. To suggest the folks in Gainesville don't have the collection and density and interest to have their own local government is, I think, to ignore a rich history in communities that are very well established. And the folks in East Cobb simply want the right to join that level of service and representation. The question was raised earlier too, Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the committee. Again, Ms. Seeger raised the question. She suggested this appointed mayor approach is somehow undemocratic. I would suggest exactly the opposite. I would suggest that a mayor who operates, that's accountable to the board, to the many, serving as first among equals, allows every single representative to influence the mayor in a much more direct way. We've seen mayors around the state, we've seen executives in counties and otherwise say, you know what, I have this city council here, but they're just kind of on the side. I was elected as the executive. I mayor, I chairman really have represent the voice of the people, and I am going to act alone. I think what this form that's suggested by Chairman Dollar, I think wisely in the bill, and we would also propose in the city of Lost Mountain in the coming weeks, allows this first among equals approach to empower every single elected official to be a stakeholder in the way executive decisions are made. There not be this set aside chairman or set aside mayor that thinks they alone represent the people. That this collegial committee approach, first among equals, has worked very well in other settings. It happens in some counties and in our school board in a way that I think that dynamic is a strong one. The question was raised also about the transfer of assets, Mr. Chairman. I would remind people that say we're not going to get that contend that there's going to be fortunes spent on real estate and on assets. Well, these assets don't belong to anyone other than the citizens themselves. I mean, the citizens with their tax dollars have paid for fire engines. The citizens with their tax dollars have paid for serviceable body armor. They've paid for real estate. In fact, we see that, and that's really underlying Chairman Dollar's bill. With the creation of the city of Dunwoody, there was this issue was raised, and we saw that the cost of acquisition of real estate was, I was going to say that I want to confirm with Chairman Dollar, $100 an acre is the transfer cost. It's paid for, so there's actually a financial transaction, but the substance of that recognizes that these assets have already been paid for by the citizenry. That just as DeKalb County shouldn't sell a fire station to the city of Dunwoody for $10 million, there's not going to be a sale at the cost of construction. It's going to be a transfer cost. The consideration will be paid, but at $100 per acre, that is well within the financial resources of the city of East Cobb to be able to transfer these assets so they can be, again, transferred consistent with the 489 agreement, not by both, but from one to the other. So there's not only no duplication of services, but there is a closer to the people, more credible execution of services. And that gets back to this question of the fire station, of the idea of lower quality service. You know, we have intergovernmental agreements all over the place. We have a city of Smyrna has their own fire department. If there's a big fire in the city of Smyrna, Cobb County Fire supports them in a way that's credible, that's reasonable. And the idea that a Cobb County fire, a fire asset and professionals are going to be 5 miles away when there's a big blazing fire that the city of East Cobb's folks could use help with. The fact that they're going to sit by and say, wait a minute, that's not our city, we're not going to touch, that's just not credible. Happens all the time. There's tremendous working together within assets, both on law enforcement and the fire side. And I just think the claim was not credible. There's going to be a diminution of service. I think, again, the service can be more tailored to the specific needs of the city. Furthermore, as you talk about law enforcement and fire, one thing to address Mr. Killibrew's question about he thinks it's going to be more government and it's flawed. He thinks the study was flawed. I would tell you to take a look across Cobb County about where the police resources are being committed. Look at your tax dollars as a citizen of unincorporated Cobb County and ask yourself, I'm paying this much for police, and how many police are really patrolling my community? I would tell you Cobb County looks across Cobb and makes decisions about where to apply and where to apportion and send police assets. And police assets are not uniformly distributed across Cobb County. In fact, I would tell you, if you're a resident of East Cobb, your tax dollars are paying for police. But those police are not patrolling your streets. Those police have been sent other places in Cobb County. They've been posted in other places of Cobb County so that your tax dollars aren't really, that are going to police, are not supporting the policing of your community. They're supporting the policing of other parts of Cobb County that is not your backyard. And that citizens in East Cobb that would simply say, we think it's a better business proposition that our police tax dollars support our specific area. I will tell you, you're going to get a demonstrably better level of service for the police tax dollar, or for the perhaps even for the fire tax dollar, not because anyone's at fault, just the very nature of this community funding its own resources will be recognized, and I think in a very powerful and very beneficial way. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to go on and belabor any points. I just wanted to highlight the support from across the base of elected officials here in the legislature that support Chairman Dollar. I'm count myself as one of them. And I think the cityhood movement needs to be seen in the context of fact. I recognize that several years ago, part of the impetus of the East Cobb movement might have been pushed by real estate interests for more and more and more and more and more density. I think the interest here is quality of life and representative government. I think those are two mandates that we can be very proud of that underlie this proposal for the city of East Cobb, and I would ask for the committee support.
Thank you, Chairman Sessler. The committee have any questions for Chairman Sessler? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Do have one. Representative Mary Frances Williams.
Representative Setzler, you made a comment about police cars or police service not being available at East Cobb because those cars are being sent to other parts of Cobb County. Could you talk about where you get that information, or do you have data to back that up? And exactly what are you referring to? I'm a little bit confused by that.
What I'm saying, if I were the Cobb County Police Department, I would look at where my crime is, and I would take the assets that I've got that are available to address that crime, and I would send them to where the crime data takes me. So let me finish. So there across Cobb County, there's not an even distribution of where crimes are being committed. So I think you look at the commission and the Cobb Fire Department, they're making wise decisions given the resources they have at their disposal to address where crime data takes them and where they need to address. It's a reasonable thing for them to do. I think as citizens of East Cobb, though, who are thinking about this idea of we think we've got a community of interest. We think there's people with common goals in terms of quality of life, in terms of representative government. I want to have not one representative per 200,000 people, but one for maybe 9,000 or 10,000 people. A benefit of that can be that rather than I being one of 760,000 people in Cobb County that sends assets wherever they need to go, I can also recognize that my police dollar now will stay closer to home. And I think citizens themselves can say that's not a bad thing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes,
So
yes.
looking at the demographics of the city of East Cobb, it looks like it's anywhere from 72.5 to over 75% white. And do you know how that compares to demographics for the entire county of Cobb? Or
I would tell you, Representative Williams, appreciate your question. I have supported every single cityhood movement we've had since I've been elected. Because I believe whether it's the city of South Fulton, or it's the city of Milton, whether it's the city of East Cobb, whether it's the city of Mableton, I look forward and will proudly speak and support city of Mableton, another part of Cobb County, Lost Mountain, Vinings, others. I think the question is areas I think can solve their problems at the local level best when the decision makers are closer to the people. And I think when you look at the communities that have sought to incorporate, I think there's a very diverse look to those. I think we as the General Assembly can be very, very proud of that. And I think that if there's folks in 55, 60,000 people in East Cobb that want to incorporate, folks in South Fulton, folks anywhere, I think it's a positive step and plan to support those. And I think the premise is wrong to ask, well, does this group look more the same than a broader population of people? I think the people in, I think there's a community of interest in each one of our counties that can say, hey, we are a county, we feel a sense of community that we don't want to just be one big state of Georgia law enforcement. We want to have county law enforcement. We want to have city law. So I think that's the message here. I think it's an important one. I think it's something we can be proud of. And I think no matter what the face of citizens look like, I think government delivered at the local level closer to the people is something we can all support and be proud of.
yeah,
If
you
the
haven't
business
really
model
answered my
works for them.
question, but thank you. I just think it's worth remarking that the demographics of this particular chosen area of county stand out in a way that makes me curious about the decision to pursue cityhood. But thank you.
Thank you. Representative Maynard?
Chairman Setzler, thank you for presenting.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
made me think about a lot of things just being on this Governmental Affairs Committee, and we're going to have several other cityhood bills that we're looking at. What happens on day one if this bill goes forward? Who decides who does the first task?
Yeah. Part of this process, and I think Chairman Dollar can speak to this, is one of the reasons we're wanting to put this on the ballot when we are, is so there's a ramp up period, that there's not that to step into the services the city are going to provide. I would defer to Chairman Dollar to speak to the tactical month by month plan for that. But I think consistent with other cities we've seen, I think we've given the city of East Cobb a glide path and a timeline that's reasonable, that allows them to deliver this, that it doesn't push all this on them in a timeline that's not deliverable. So I feel comfortable that it's a timeline that can work out. I wouldn't want to prejudge that I can roll out a schedule for you and give sort of a week by week execution matrix. I don't have that here with me today. But I do believe, part of the decision here, you as committee members and we as legislators, is to assess the civic capacity of this area. Does this collection of citizens have the critical mass and capacity to hire professionals, engage professionals, and put a team in place that can deliver this? And I believe it has the civic capacity to execute a plan better, candidly, than many of the cities we've created and are functioning today.
This is to Representative Williams' point earlier. I used to live in Sandy Springs, right at the intersection of Abernathy and Johnson Ferry Road. So I know exactly where that southern border is. And if you go down Johnson Ferry, East Cobb is its own place, so I can understand why you guys are so passionate about it. But it is its own place. And I don't think anything could change with the demographics. East Cobb is just what East Cobb is.
And I can speak to back to Representative Williams' question. I do have some statistics. I'm not going to share specifically here. I do know in the West Cobb precinct, I've got a gentleman that's has family members on the police force. And when you look at the beats that are covered in West Cobb, I don't want to give away in public the stats that don't need to be shared with bad guys. But when you look at the statistics of where the police resources are committed day in, day out, citizens would be surprised they don't have the police coverage that they pay for and they think they've got, because assets are being shifted elsewhere. And again, I think as a manager of a county-wide police force, I don't fault them for that, but nor can you fault citizens for saying, I want my dollar to be able to police around me in my direct community. And I think it's a fair question. That's why I wanted to tee that up as an issue. I think there's something that citizens don't realize. There's going to be a level of police attention to their direct community they don't get today. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Setzler. And I see no other further questions. Chairman Dollar, do you have any closing remarks before we finish our meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I do. Chairman Setzler touched on most of them. I didn't get into, I just wanted to kind of explain the bill and the effort and what it is. And I didn't want to get too much bogged down in the history, but it was brought up, and I think it's worth noting. This has been a multi-year process, and the bill was brought up 4 years ago, and based on community feedback, I did not pursue it 3 years ago. And I think a lot of that was, just the newness of it. It was such a new and kind of different idea for people. It took a while for them to sink in and a while to really learn about it. But I can definitely attest to the tide and the winds have definitely changed on it. It is a far more well-received idea, much more popular. I think people are starting to understand it. I list myself among the converts when this idea was first brought to me. I was not in support of it. And as I learned more and I thought more on it, I became very much supportive of it, and really thought it would be a positive for the community that I have called home my entire life. I've never called another place home except when I was at Georgia, go Dom. And it's an area that I've represented my entire adult life. The last thing I want to do is anything that I would consider harmful to that community. We just bought a new house. We moved 6 miles, and it might be our forever home. I'm not leaving. So it's something that is near and dear to me, and I think that is near and dear to a lot of other people. Would like to comment on Mr. Black, who I have known for a while and have a deep amount of respect for. But I will have to take issue that there has been an incredible amount of community outreach on this. Cindy and Sarah spoke to it. We've had not one, not two, but series upon series, because I've been on them, of town halls. Every person who's been on that town hall has been asked several questions about several issues of this city. So much that I want to publicly thank Lead Council Stuart Morelli, because I don't know how many times I've come to him to say, hey, we need to make another change. And it was all based on community feedback. To Mr. Hanson's point of, an argument of not to do this and that we should, do away with the other cities in Cobb County. I think you could why stop there? Why not just do away with all cities and have us run every community? Or maybe even do away with the state of Georgia if you want to take it even a step further and have a central government that can do everything. I don't agree with that premise, and I just wanted to address that. To Representative Williams' point, I can say that in as so much far as my involvement in the map drawing, which was quite significant. The reapportionment office helped me to draw this map. I never once looked at ethnicity, race, or income. I think you could look at the map and quite plainly see that it is clear geographic boundaries. There's one line that may be a creek, but everything else is pretty much major roads, and it does not split any subdivisions. I believe that's it. Ms. Seeger commented on the mayor structure. It is unusual. I will confess that it was not my idea. It's something that in looking at different forms of government, I'm glad that I happened upon Chairman Setzler, and he brought the idea to my attention. I brought it back to the committee. They really liked it. We asked the people, and they thought it was great too. That they've looked around at other cities in our vicinity, in neighboring counties and our own counties, and has seen changes that have happened by an individual in many cases. And the last thing we want in East Cobb is, someone to come in, somebody to get elected mayor and come in with a vision of East Cobb and really form it in their own, because they have been, elected by the people to do that. The vision is to maintain and have the community that we have now. That's the vision of East Cobb. Everybody moves there because it's a great community, and they want to have the right to vote for locals that will help with that self-determination. So with that, Chairman, I will wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Dollar. Appreciate your presentation and sticking around and helping answer questions and that sort of thing. I want to thank everyone who participated today. and came out and let your voice be heard. This is a hearing only meeting. However, these comments are being viewed by various members of our committee and will be translated before our next committee meeting. We actually have a committee meeting scheduled, full committee meeting tomorrow. This bill is subject to be called by the chair at that meeting if she so chooses. And thank you, committee. And with that, we'll adjourn.